You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
All right, what's up, Los Angeles? Welcome back to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network, live on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Back from the break. If you're on radio, if you're on podcast, this is your UCLA Bruins segment of the show. Excited to talk all things Westwood and Chip Kelly and all the great Bruins down there on this most beautiful campus. So can't wait to get into it. Joining me as always, the madman Jamal Madney. What's up, brother? Happy to talk Bruins with you.
Oh, always great to talk my beloved Bruins, Rye. It's doing well. Excited to jump into it. Happy to be here in Cabo San Lucas for a friend's wedding and get to talk UCLA and hang out in Mexico a little bit. Oh, man, have I died and gone to heaven?
Yeah. It doesn't sound, you can't get much better than that. I'm very jealous as I sit here in my telephone booth in Pasadena, rainy Pasadena.
Superman's telephone booth right there. He's right. I love it.
Something like that. So, but yes, we're going to do a fun show for Bruins fans today. We just finished up on radio talking USC, doing kind of our preseason awards. So we're going to do that for UCLA. Categories are the same: breakout player, comeback player, MVP, surprise star, make or break season, and freshman or incoming player we are most looking forward to. Before we get into it, show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. It's going to give you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. If you deposit $100, you get $50 free to play with. You still got the MLB going on, but more importantly, football is only about a month and a half away. So you can make all your future bets on your Rams or Chargers or your Bruins or Trojans, whoever you want to bet on. Or just if you're a smart bettor and don't bet with your heart, you can bet on other teams as well. It's all done at betonline.ag. Make sure you use that promo code BELIEVE. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. Jamal, before we get into UCLA, random topic. Every now and then we like to have these random conversations.
Yes, sir.
I was thinking about this the other day. I was going to bring it up last week when we recorded and, things got crazy. We weren't able to jump on together. And I thought it'd be kind of fun. And I'm trying to think the best way to word this. So I was thinking about things that are not illegal and they're very, maybe not catastrophic. They're minimal, but you find them criminal. And so I'll go first to give you an example, but think of something that is, again, not illegal, but you find a criminal act. So but it has to be like a small thing, not like we're not talking big pharma. We're not talking insurance policies or anything like that. But so I'll start, and mine's kind of on the line of those. We spent, obviously everyone knows my story, or if you don't know, my daughter spent a lot of time in the hospital early on. And so we were at a number of hospitals. We were at, Kaiser Pasadena, Kaiser Sunset, Children's Hospital. We've now been at Keck Medical. We've been at Cedars-Sinai. We've been all over the place. The thing that I find criminal is all these hospitals do amazing work, save my daughter's life. They all charge for parking. To me, that is criminal. Here we are spending, my daughter, when it's all said and done, we had amazing insurance. So luckily we were very blessed to be, at the end of the day, though, my daughter's medical bills were over $3 million. Paid this hospital over $3 million. Had to pay $20 for parking every single day we were at those hospitals. To me, that is criminal. How are you charging parking? I know a lot of those parking garages might be privately owned, but why doesn't the hospital just buy the damn parking garage and let you park there for free? So that's my little soapbox of something very minimal and legal, but I find criminal in this world.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one to follow, Ryan. And it's so funny right there. It actually kind of reminds me of that Seinfeld episode. I'm a huge Seinfeld guy, where George and Jerry are in the medical kind of exam room, and George is going to for a chiropractor, and he sort of walks in and he says, touch this, feel that, boom, $75. And he's like, the guy didn't do anything in there. It's not like he entertained me. He was in there for 2 minutes. And so when the bill comes, George decides only to pay half. And Jerry's like, you can't pay half, and he's a doctor. You got to pay what he says. And then George then said, no, I pay what I say, and that's it. And so I was reminded of that Costanza story while you were talking there, Rye. I mean, it's criminal. They get you sort of on the back end of everything. That's absolutely ridiculous. It actually sort of reminds me of one more Seinfeld episode. And I promise this is in the Seinfeld podcast, but
these are great.
Jerry has this bit where he says, every time you watch these old police videos, and not to get sort of political in any way, but you see like the cops like, get this guy in a handcuffs, and it's like very aggressive, and they, the face is down on the pavement, and you just sort of, you put the handcuffs behind him and you pick him up and you sort of drag him to the car. But then in that last moment when he or she's got to get into the car, they like very carefully like hold the head to make sure that like the head doesn't get hit on the frame of the door. And it's like, you treat the guy or the girl like, crap for basically the 5 minutes of like, doing this. And then it's like, but we really don't want to hit your head on the way. And that $20 parking feels that way. We're going to sort of lead you blind, but no. The least they could do is sort of give the free parking. I love that, Ryan.
Yeah,
for me, Ryan, the sort of the criminal activity that frustrates me to no end, and sort of, people, I've mentioned this, is when you are at a red light and there is no oncoming or cross traffic, and you're just sitting there, and there's nothing, there's no one is around, and it's one of these long red lights, and you got to sit there for 2-3 minutes, and it's just ridiculous. And to me, that is sort of the lowest form of human life, is having to sit there and do nothing. Because this light is red, when there's no logic behind it, there's nobody around you. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me and how tempted I have been to just run the red light and go for it. And greater wisdom prevails. But that is sort of my pet peeve. In a way, it's sort of a variant, because it's like my pet peeve in that regard is following the rules. I would rather just break the rules and go, but that's the one that kills me every time.
That's so great. And here's a story for you where it makes it criminal. It makes it criminal. So I was in high school, and this was 100% had to be premeditated, had to be. So I'm going to pick up a buddy from a party, or I was at a party, went to pick him up to bring him back to the party. So it's late at night in high school. So, I live in a town that there wasn't much activity outside of what was happening in high school and speeding tickets. Like our police force, that's what they broke up high school parties, gave speeding tickets. It is a very safe, quiet, suburban city. And so it was late, it's like 1 a.m. or something. I'm trying to turn left onto the street at a red light. I watched, was it 2 or 3 times? This is over 15 years ago now, but 2 or 3 times where the light just skips me. It loops. So it turns red. Mine's supposed to turn green. It doesn't. It goes back to green going the other way. 3 times that happens. Finally, there's not a car has driven by in the last, I'm sitting at this light for 10 minutes probably. Finally, I'm like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to go. Turn left. And then I turn right into my buddy's neighborhood. Out of nowhere, here comes a cop, sirens on, pulls me over. And he's like, why he pulled you over? I'm like, I'm guessing because that light was still red. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, but it skipped me 3 times. There wasn't a car. He's like, I don't care. I didn't get a ticket. I don't know if he just saw my side, but for sure was premeditated that they were just on that loop waiting for me to do what you said and just break the law and go against it. So yeah, that is criminal. I agree.
No doubt, Ryan. I mean, my goodness, it's like at some point there needs to be some discretion involved if the lights are so pre-recorded in a way where they're not taking sort of any logic into the game. But I feel your pain there, Ryan. I would have been your lawyer and gone and fought that case for you because it's so near and dear to my heart.
Good to know. So if it comes up again, strangely in LA, that happens rarely in LA where you see no cars, but every now and then.
But no Jacob Emrani. You call Jamal Madney. 1-800-call Jamal. That's going to be the new toll-free number.
What was your show again? Midnight Jamal or Midnight Madney?
The Midnight Madney show in high school.
So 1-800 Midnight Madney for after dark lawyer collection calls. Okay, I like that. All right, let's get into some UCLA talk now. So I always like doing some random jiff jaff here and there, but breakout player. This should be fun because there's a lot of players coming back on this roster, but there's also a lot of new faces, a lot of incoming young faces, a lot of transfers. So this can go a number of different ways. Jamal Madney, who do you got as your breakout star for 2023?
Ryan, this is going to be, I think, a more traditional pick again. I think as we did with USC. I think what's interesting about why this would be constituted a breakout is just the way I think the narrative is framed right now nationally in terms of expectation. And so for me, the breakout player is going to be TJ Harden for UCLA. I fully expect TJ Harden to take the reins of running back one and really be that next guy after Charbonnet, after Demetric Felton, after Joshua Kelly, and be the next true RB1 in this Chip Kelly system. Run for north of 1,000 yards, run for north of 10 touchdowns, be in that 4.5 to 5.5 yards per carry type of situation, and just really be that bell cow for this zone read running scheme that Chip Kelly has run so marvelously for the better part of a decade. And I think that what separates TJ Harden for me is his ability to run the ball both vertically, horizontally with his quick feet, and his ability to catch out of the backfield. And so watching him in the spring, Ryan, he's got that upright running style, much like his running back coach, Deshaun Foster. He's so smooth with the ball. The first guy always just seems to sort of melt off of his body in terms of the first guy trying to tackle him and bring him down. And Deshaun Foster has always said the mark of a great running back is you always got to make that first guy miss. And TJ Harden just seems to have the whole collection of skills, the ability to run north-south. He's got kind of Le'Veon Bell-like feet a little bit with that sidestepping, the upright running style, and then he's just so fluid out of the backfield from receiving. And so TJ Harden, for me, I think so much of the conversation nationally right now is still around Carson Steele. And when you look at grades like PFF and ESPN and other major national media outlets, obviously they're rating Carson Steele as one of the top transfer prospects in the entire country, and rightfully so. Carson Steele is the leading returning rusher in the NCAA with 1,556 yards from Ball State. He was 9th in the country last year in rushing, and the top 8 guys all declared for the NFL draft. So there's an expectation that Carson Steele is going to just sort of slide in there and be running back 1 for UCLA. I think Steele's going to have a great year, but in watching spring ball and spring practices, it was clear TJ Harden was RB1. I think Steele still, needs to kind of get used to the level difference between the MAC and the Pac-12, and where it really separates for me is catching out of the backfield, where Steele still looks a little bit unnatural. Harden looks so fluid. So to me, so much of this conversation right now is who's going to be the running back. It's very evident to me it's going to be TJ Harden, and he's going to be the next great one at UCLA and the true breakout star for the Bruins in 2023.
I was so pleasantly surprised last year when watching TJ Harden. Obviously, we've not just fell in love with, but we were able to watch greatness with Zach Charbonnet. But seeing TJ Harden come in here and there in spells, you're like, if Zach Charbonnet wasn't here, this guy would be the bell cow back. Like, that's how explosive and well-rounded he looked as a true freshman last year. So I completely agree. I mean, what's great about this Chip Kelly system is you can kind of plug in anyone and they're going to have success. But TJ Harden and a guy like Zach Charbonnet, that talent just brings that success to like great seasons. And I think TJ Harden absolutely has that ability to truly break out. I'll talk more about him a little later. Little tease there. But for me, I mean, this isn't cheating, I guess, but my breakout candidate is Kyle Ford. We kind of pegged him as a breakout candidate for USC last year. And unfortunately, just with the depth they had at receiver and just the talent of Jordan Addison and Mario Williams and the breakout, or not really breakout yet, but the emergence a little bit of Brendan Rice and others, he kind of fell down the depth chart, had some big moments, but only 360 yards total, 20 catches, 2 touchdowns this season. And it's going to be interesting because breakout might not mean from 360 yards to 1,000. Because I think in this offense, regardless if it's Dante Moore, if it's Ethan Garbers, it's going to be a very run-first heavy offense. And the pass is going to complement it because you're having an inexperienced quarterback play. But for Kyle Ford, what's going to be that true kind of taking that role of clutch performer, if you will.
Yes.
They have the other guy on the other side that I think we're both going to talk about here in a few, and J. Michael Sturdivant, who's going to be your just kind of star receiver. But who's going to be the guy that fills that void on 3rd and long, on 2nd and long, on 4th down situations, those goal line jump ball situations that can be your gotta have it, need to have it, and he's going to go get it for you. And so I think that's where I see him more in the breakout. I think he will improve on his 360 yards. I think we can see him have 500 plus just because this wide receiver room isn't quite as deep as what we see across town. And he'll kind of will be that wide receiver 2 or 3 by default. That's not disrespect to the room, but it's just the talent he brings to it. But I think where his true breakout is going to be is in those gotta have moments, because he's been in some of those situations played against UCLA last year in those situations, and he's older and longer in tooth, if you will, in terms of age. So Kyle Ford's my breakout candidate for 2023.
Yeah, Ryan, I couldn't agree more there, and I'll save you the suspense in terms of spoiler alert. I mean, he's unquestionably wide receiver number 2 on this team, no doubt. I think the gap between 2 and 3 on this roster, some very talented guys at 3, 4, 5. It's the deepest UCLA's wide receiver room has been in years, arguably a decade. You could even go back 20 years to the days of Craig Bragg when you talk about the depth of this wide receiver room. Not quite the depth of USC, but those first 2 guys are as good as anybody SC has. And Kyle Ford, to me, is wide receiver 2. Every sort of contested ball, every ball sort of south of 12 yards, every ball where, it's traffic, you got to body him up and sort of almost like an NBA post player, sort of shadow your body to get the ball. Kyle Ford has really won the vast majority of those one-on-one situations in spring ball. And absolutely, when you talk about having an early, inexperienced quarterback, it's going to be year 1 as a starter, regardless of who the quarterback is going to be. You need that sort of security blanket in these tough down and distances, and Kyle Ford is going to be that guy. He's going to be north of 360, no doubt about it. If Kyle Ford is 360 is south of 360, something has gone terribly wrong in the UCLA football season for 2023. I see Kyle Ford north of 500.
There you go. Yeah, love it. Cannot wait to see him play. So, all right, moving along. Comeback player of the year. See what approach you take on this one. Went a little different for USC. So let's see what you do for UCLA. Who's your comeback player in 2023?
So Ryan, for me, this is a little bit more of the kind of the traditional definition. And this is a guy who was sort of forgotten last year because of injury, obviously, and his ability to come back, I think is going to be a very interesting storyline, not being talked about at all at this point in the season. And to me, it's Ali Cahill. If you recall, Ali Cahill was really that first great transfer get for Chip Kelly. I mean, a guy out of Alabama to come to UCLA. It really sort of set the path of this sort of Chip Kelly strategy with the transfer portal. And if you recall, 2 seasons ago in the season opener against Hawaii, he had a sack, he had huge tackles, he had the block punt. It really was sort of a star in the making. And we were really looking at Ali Cahill in much the same way we think of Oluwafemi today. And so to me, moving forward, last year injuries got the better part of Cahill. I see Cahill having a Latu-like comeback story in 23, the way Latu did in 22. And when you look at this sort of linebacker room, you've got some unbelievable talent there on the back end. But there is still that true inside backer, the guy who's going to sort of clog up the lanes, the guy who's really going to be able to kind of control things outside of Moasa. You got Moasa, you got Oladejo as your 2 anchors, but you need that third backer in a lot of situations. And I see Cahill as being that complementary third piece to those guys and having really a huge impact on this team as a result, playing a tremendous role. And Ali Cahill, to me, is going to be a real star and stalwart on this defense that's going to take this team to the next level in 23.
Definitely a guy that was, I think, forgotten. And unfortunately, when you deal with injuries, you kind of do get forgotten. And the storylines of Latu and Moasau and some of these other players on defense obviously took the fold and took the lion's share of the talk. But you figure with how talented this defense is, if Cahill is able to come back and be healthy and be the player he is, I mean, they're just that much better. And they just have that much more depth and versatility. And like we've said, it's the most talented defense we've seen in years. Now they just have to execute. And hopefully this new kind of system with Lynn as the new DB or the new defensive coordinator can really take root and take hold. And so that piggybacks on my comeback player of the year. And I'm going with Devin Kirkwood. I think he's a kid that showed a lot of flashes his first season as a true freshman, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, 15 or so tackles. And last year, I mean, I thought he kind of took a step back in a way that a lot of guys in the secondary did. Stats in terms of tackles were the exact same, no forced turnovers on his end, had some blown assignments, wasn't that kind of shutdown corner. We were expecting him to make that jump from year 1 to 2. So the talent's clearly there. Whether it was a system fit, whether it was not enough back end help around him, whatever it may be, I think he's a kid that still is very talented and can be an anchor on this back end of this defense. And you'll see him hopefully make that jump and be that comeback player to what we were expecting him to be 2 years ago, now going into year 3.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that, it was interesting. Kirkwood is someone who I had on this list later on in a very unique way. I couldn't agree with you more. We were sort of expecting Kirkwood to kind of take this secondary by the horns, be really the face of the secondary, because he's got all the physical tools. I mean, when you look at him, he's one of these bigger corners. He's sort of cut from that Richard Sherman type of ilk physically. Obviously, personality is very different. Such a great kid, so humble. And he made those flashes, that interception against Washington 2 years ago, some really big pass defenses in critical moments, and really looking for him to be that kind of shutdown corner of the wide receiver ones. Didn't quite happen. I think the pressure got to him a little bit of a sophomore slump, but I expect him to really come back. And I think his ability to be the face of that secondary with the likes of Jordan Davies and others, I think is going to be really critical to UCLA's success. And so couldn't agree with you more about Kirkwood.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, if he can get to where we think he could be and the likes of the other guys we've talked about, I mean, there's no reason this defense can't be one of the top ones in the Pac-12 and be an addition to this team instead of a subtraction, if you will, and just hold on to your seat and hope for a stop. They might be an actual positive point and positive reference. So this will be a fun one just because we have an idea, but we don't truly know who is going to be the starting quarterback. So MVP can go a number of different ways for this team. Who you got for your MVP?
My unanimous MVP for the 2023 season for the Bruins of UCLA is the law firm known as J. Michael Sturdivant. He is going to be the absolute linchpin to this offense moving forward. This is probably the most talented wide receiver UCLA has had, just in terms of raw talent, since Freddie Mitchell in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was stealing in spring ball. There was not a guy who could cover him on 2 consecutive plays. He was a man among boys. You look at his size, you look at his speed, you look at his catch radius. I mean, it's just incredible. Everybody who watched him in spring ball was like, this is a day one NFL pick. If he just sort of plays the way he's naturally going to play, I think he got lost in the Cal program with not having a great quarterback and Cal not really being in a lot of notable games given their level of struggle. J. Michael Sturdivant, because there's going to be a newcomer at quarterback. And obviously Ford is going to be the guy, that sort of security blanket on 3rd and 6 and some of these tough catches. But in that true play action where teams are going to start realizing, look, the zone read is the bread and butter of this offense. How are they going to use variation off of that? How are they going to go play action off of that? How are they going to get big plays off of that to really stretch this field? Because at the end of the day, the Pac-12 is as loaded as it's ever been at the quarterback and at the offensive position. You cannot just run the ball and kind of dink and dump your way to be successful. You are going to need explosive plays moving forward. J. Michael Sturdivant is going to be, regardless of who the quarterback is, he's going to lead this team in receiving yards. He's going to lead this team in receiving touchdowns. He's going to probably lead this team in receptions as well. And so he is going to bring that whole other dimension to this offense that is going to complement this running game. And anytime you have a quarterback who's new and young and maybe is struggling to sort of get comfortable in his own skin and learn this offense, they are going to rely on those 1 or 2 playmakers that are going to be really key to their success. And J. Michael Sturdivant was far and away wide receiver 1 for this UCLA team, and he is going to be the MVP of this team moving forward.
Completely agree. He was my MVP. I'm not going to think of another name because there is no other name. I mean, the law firm is going to be the MVP of this team. I don't need to add much more. You said everything on point per usual. The only thing I will say is, we've done a few articles and different pods, obviously, throughout spring camp, and a few of those got picked up by Cal Bears, like message board, like chat boards and stuff. And so we can see like where our traffic comes from. So I was able to kind of go through the funnel and see where it came from. And so I went and just checked them out, and all of them were just like, man, I cannot believe we let Sturdivant go. I can't believe he's going to go play for our rival down south. Like just like pure upset that they realized what they had. It's kind of like that guy that loses the girl and realizes afterwards, like, I could have been better. Like, what did I do? I didn't do enough to keep her around. Like, she was above my league anyway, and I screwed it up, and now she's gone off to ride her pastures. And that's the sentiment up in Berkeley with the loss of J. Michael Sturdivant, and they're going to really see it this year when he shines in this Chip Kelly system, regardless, like you said, of who plays quarterback. So couldn't agree more. He's your MVP.
No doubt about it, Ryan. And I may even go one step further here, and I will. And I'll say that if you go across both teams, USC and UCLA, I think the leading receiver in terms of receptions, yards, and touchdowns will be J. Michael Sturdivant across both teams. Not just for UCLA, because there's so many mouths to feed on the SC side. I think they're going to kind of cancel each other out a little bit. This guy is going to be a day one NFL pick. He is everything that the NFL is looking for in terms of size, in terms of speed, and then the quickness. The thing that jumps out to me is his quickness at the line of scrimmage, his ability to separate right off of the first step and a half. And he's got a 2-3 yard cushion on anybody that's guarding him. It's just absolutely remarkable. He is going to seemingly be open on every play. And that is going to be just such a delight for either Garbers or more, as knowing that they can anchor there in terms of kind of their eye movement, in terms of their body language, in terms of their progression. Ford is going to be just such a tremendous in-between receiver, but he's not going to get a lot of separation. So it's not always going to be obvious that Ford is the guy to go to. Sturdivant very clearly is going to be the guy to go to, and he's really going to provide structure to that passing game, and just so absolutely excited to see him in the baby blue and gold. He picked the right school. It's like, okay, you sort of at 18, my father always told me this about my undergrad pick. I won't get into that, but he said, look, it's okay if you made a mistake at 18, but at 20 and 22, you got to get it right. And J. Michael Sturdivant, he might have made a mistake at 18 going to Cal, but he got it right at 20 going to the Bruins of UCLA.
Yeah, he didn't know he's coming from Texas. He had to test the waters, and now he knows what's right. And it's going to be really fun watching when UCLA travels to Salt Lake this year to play Utah. No Clark Phillips with Utah. Yeah. I don't know who's going to be able to slow down J. Michael Sturdivant, and anyone in the Pac-12 for that matter. So will be a lot of fun. All right, moving along. Surprise star. This is going to be a fun one. I'll let you kick it off. Who's your surprise star?
So, Ryan, it's sort of related to what we were talking about with Kirkwood in the secondary. I think when you look at this UCLA team, you have a really good sense of where they are in terms of their identity, either at RB1, RB2, whether at wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, QB1, QB2. Obviously, there's a battle there. I think there's acknowledgement that there's still some work that needs to be done on the offensive line, but everyone is kind of about equal there. And then when you look at the defensive side, I think the line, between the Murphy twins and everything that's going on there. And then, you look at the linebackers with Latu in this hybrid role. And we talked about Moasau, and we're going to talk about another stud here soon. To me, the question mark, just in terms of identity, is still very much the secondary. We are waiting for Kirkwood to kind of take the reins. We're waiting for perhaps a Jordan Davies to take the reins. He's shown flashes. But who is really going to sort of galvanize that secondary and really play a key role? To me, the surprise star of the team is going to be Alex Johnson. And we spent a lot of time, me and Will Decker, with Alex's dad at spring ball, got a chance to see him up close. And the one guy who was kind of consistently finding ways to disrupt the passing game from time to time in spring ball, the one guy who kind of even made Sturdivant's life a little bit difficult from time to time, who kind of came in there and played Ford really well and played Loya and TMA and these other guys really well, was Alex Johnson. I think at 6'3", he's about 205, and he has got deceptively fast closing speed. This is a guy that has an absolute motor, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people, because I think in this scheme at the start of the year, he may be playing a little bit more nickel. He may be kind of cornerback 3. So he's going to be set up against, the third, fourth wide receiver, fifth wide receiver in different formations. And I think his ability to close on those guys, I see him having some very significant pass breakups, even some interceptions. And he's also a very sure tackler. And I think the combination of this being the last year in the program for him, I think there's a focus, there's an urgency. I think he's ready to really surprise a lot of people. And to me, Alex Johnson is going to be a huge piece to this secondary moving forward, and could arguably, by the end of it, even be the best player on this secondary for 2023.
Love that. That's a great one. And obviously will certainly help this defense like we've been talking about the whole time. So for me, I'm basing mine more on, you and Will were both at a lot of spring practices and had glowing reviews of kind of how this guy has improved year over year, and especially going into this year. And so I'm going to go with Colson Yankov as my surprise star. Just this pure size, 6'4", 210. I think the fact that, he's changed positions, he didn't transfer, he's stuck with his program, he's seen his usage rates vary, sometimes getting absolutely zero. And then you go against the Cal game with Zach Charbonnet gets 11 carries for over 50 yards. And so I think that this is a very deep running back room, but the fact that he has versatility as a back and a receiver and just the pure size that maybe some of the other backs don't have. Now, by surprise star, I'm not saying this guy's going to rush for 1,000 yards, but I think he's going to have some big time moments for this team and surprise people that maybe forgot he was even on this roster, especially when you talk about TJ Harden, when you talk about the other Carson Steele and the Keegan Jones and these other running backs. And he's like, hey, don't forget about me. I stuck it through for 4 years here. I stuck it through in the bad times of the Chip Kelly era, and I'm here now for the good times, and I'm going to have some good moments myself as I continue my career. So I think Colson Yankov could be your surprise star.
Oh, I love that one, Ryan. Absolutely. Yankov is my guy. Kind of started off at the early part of last season as almost being kind of the Darko Milicic of, the UCLA Bruins. I remember when Milicic was drafted in between LeBron and Carmelo Anthony that, the Pistons would only put him into the game when they were up 30, and it was almost the Red Auerbach kind of victory cigar move there. And whenever Yankov made his way on the field in the fourth quarter, you knew the Bruins had it locked up. But to me, Yankov, he just caught my eye the first day I was at spring practice, Ryan. I mean, I think he's probably shed about 15 to 20 pounds, and then it's all muscle. He's so lean. And when you look at him, he still kind of has the big power. He always looks to me like Toby Gerhart when Gerhart was at Stanford, kind of this bigger back and, almost looks like a fullback carrying the ball, can always just sort of plow through the line and sort of make the first 2-3 guys miss in terms of being able to fall forward. But the thing that strikes me is that explosiveness. He's got a burst in that second level. Every time he sort of gets into the second level of the defense, there's a burst there that people don't realize. And I think that burst has been attributed to his offseason regimen. Mm-hmm. And then when you factor in his ability to be short yardage with the burst, catching out of the backfield on those play actions and those flats, and then the blocking, he can play tight end in a particular formation. He can block like a fullback in a particular formation. He can do all of these different things that Chip can do and use him as sort of a Swiss Army knife. And I just love what I'm seeing out of him. And to be honest with you, Ryan, if you sort of blindfolded and just sort of took the numbers off of the jerseys and you just went rep by rep, and I sort of made this prediction in spring ball, I think Yankov is going to jump Steele and be RB2. I really do. Just in terms of everything that he can do, I think it's going to go Harden, Yankov, and then Steele. I can't wait to see what Chip does with Yankov. I love this pick, and I fully expect him to have a big year. Again, I don't see it be a kind of 1,000-yard year, but I see kind of a 400 to 500, 550 type of rushing season. Throw in another 200 to 300 in terms of receiving, 5-6 touchdowns rushing, another 4 or 5 receiving. This could be a 10-touchdown season for Colson Yankov, and I think he's going to play a huge role in some of the most critical games of the season for the Bruins in 23.
Amazing. The pride and joy of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Colson Yankov. All right. We got 2 categories left and about 6 minutes to get through them. So we'll have to go a little quicker. So make or break season for your UCLA Bruins. Who you got?
Ryan, this one is right down the middle. This is going to be pretty easy. It's Ethan Garbers. I mean, very simply put, he's got to win the job, and this is kind of his last opportunity. You've got Dante Moore, breathing down his neck. Dante Moore is the future of this program. If Ethan Garbers does not win this job, he's either going to have to transfer or come to the conclusion that he doesn't have an NFL future. And so to me, the way he has approached this spring practice, I still think he is the leader in the clubhouse right now, over Moore slightly, just because of knowledge of the playbook. He's really looked like a leader in the huddle. He's kind of commanded his teammates. But this thing is going to come down to how closely and quickly Moore is going to be able to adopt the playbook, because you can see in improvisational situations where athleticism is required, kind of the instincts take over, Moore beats him out. But what Garbers has going for him is the knowledge of the playbook, the commitment to this offense, and the overall leadership. This is make it or break it for Ethan Garbers. I am rooting for him, and this is the year. He either becomes starting quarterback at UCLA, or he's going to have to transfer or come to a conclusion that his NFL future is likely over.
Yep, he was. That's the answer. So it was my make or break candidate as well. for everything you just said. It's season defining, but it's future defining for him, whether or not he continues playing football, whether or not he ends up at a different school or he decides to graduate from UCLA and move on to something different, similar to, one of his counterparts in the QB room that has just basically taken the business world by storm. And maybe Garbers goes that route, but definitely a make or break season in terms of quarterback for UCLA Bruins. Is it Ethan Garbers or is it going to be Dante Moore? So last category, freshman or incoming new player, new face you are most looking forward to watching?
Well, not to throw more salt on the wound on Cal Berkeley fans, although let's be honest, I enjoy doing that. It is the other stud that I am so excited about in terms of the transfer from Cal, and that is Oladejo. Yeah. I mean, that guy is just a stud. And DK Metcalf happened to be at spring ball a number of times over the course. He was working out at UCLA. I mean, just another NFL star that loves those UCLA facilities and that campus. And when you saw Oladejo stand next to DK Metcalf, it looked comparable. And you were like, wait, who is who? Which is a staggering statement considering DK Metcalf is arguably the biggest physical freak in the NFL. And seeing Oladejo in a UCLA uniform, you could tell there wasn't a lot he could do in spring ball because it was still sort of pseudo touch football. And you could tell he wanted to really get after it. And him and Latu were the two guys who Chip had to sort of rein him back. I mean, they were ready to take guys' heads off. But you just see him in his uniform. You just see him closing on whether it's a running back, whether it's a wide receiver. You see the instincts. You see the lateral quickness. I mean, he almost sort of reminds me of Giannis. In the NBA comp, where in 2 steps, the amount of ground he can cover is absolutely insane. It's kind of like Antetokounmpo. In 2 steps, the guy can go from half court to the rim just about. And Oladejo just feels that way. He can just cover so much ground in such little effort. He's got the power. He's got the tenacity. I mean, he's got the wingspan and just sort of that lateral ability to kind of, use up space. He is just going to be an absolute stud. I cannot wait to see him and Moasau and Latu together in sort of this hybrid, sort of a 4-3 type of situation. And then you got the Murphy twins up front throwing a Carl Jones. I mean, my goodness. And then Ali Kehau. I mean, this front seven of UCLA is absolutely loaded. And Oladejo is going to be a household name by about the second half of week 1. I cannot wait to see Oladejo. And he's so good, there's going to be kind of an argument over who was the more valuable Cal transfer for this year. Was it Sturdivant or was it Oladejo? That's how good Oladejo is going to be because he's going to push that debate. It's still going to be Sturdivant, but he's going to push that debate. Can't wait to see it. Yeah,
fascinating. Just continuing on, just this defense has the ability to be so good this year. And he's going to be a big reason why. The returning of a lot of returning players. I saw a PFF graphic of the top pass rushers. Obviously, Oladejo doesn't really fit that bill, but the top pass rushers in the Pac-12, 3 of the top 4 were UCLA guys. And so there's no excuses this year for this defense. Like it's either horrible scheme or horrible execution if they are not finishing as one of the top units in this conference, because the playmakers, the talent, the leadership, everything is in place. It's a matter of now going out, executing, and taking care of business, which I believe they can. And Oladejo is going to be a huge reason why that comes to fruition. So for me, I mean, the obvious answer is Dante Moore. He's your top freshman coming in. I'm not going to use that because, who knows if he starts, if it is going to be Ethan Garbers, and that's just too obvious of an answer. I was also going to play on the line of TJ Harden, but a little unfair because he did get some reputable reps last year. And so coming in as a sophomore, we already talked about it a bunch. So I'll go with a different one. I'll go Jeremiah McClure, the receiver out of Mater Dei. And you talk about a true freshman. Obviously, Mater Dei and Bosco are the 2 factories here in SoCal for producing high-level collegiate talent. And he is another one to fall in that category. And you mentioned the depth of this receiver room, which I completely agree. It's one of the deepest we've seen. But the drop-off from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 3 is fairly significant. And so McClure has a real legitimate shot as a true freshman to get very important and sizable reps in his first season. And if it is Dante Moore who ends up winning that starting job, a lot of times you see these guys that are the same class have a real nice rapport, and it could be McClure and Dante more and McClure sounds kind of nice as a connection unit because of that just same class, both being freshmen. So really excited to see how this kid does. We talked about Zachariah Branch over across town at USC as this really, really good incoming freshman receiver. McClure wants to be that way over in Westwood and certainly has the talent and skill level and repertoire to do it. So a lot of fun guys, new faces, but he'll be one I'll be really excited to watch how his maturation grows within this program.
Absolutely, Ryan. And I think that's going to be sort of another storyline where that fight for wide receiver 3, I think, is going to be fierce. McClure has all of the physical abilities. I think it's just going to be a matter of him kind of getting used to the pace and the scheme of college football. You got McClure, you got Hagan, you got Loya, you got TMA, you got Cam Brown, the forgotten one. I mean, that's 5 guys that legitimately could be wide receiver 3. And if they really break out, really challenge both Sturdivant and Ford. So that is going to be absolutely fierce. And Ryan, I'm just going to kind of close with this. It's going to come down to who wins the quarterback job and how well they can protect the football and make the basic plays, and the offensive line kind of holding up. And the third element here is who's going to sort of emerge in the secondary in terms of the hierarchy. Those are the 3 watch items. And if those 3 things can happen at a moderate level, this team is going to be contending for the Pac-12 championship. And the Victory Bell game, the winner of that game, most likely is going to represent and have one of the slots in that Pac-12 championship game. And for my money, it's going to be against Oregon State. But UCLA is flying so under the radar right now. This is a team that is a top 5, top 4 team in the conference that is as good as just about anybody in this conference. And a Pac-12 championship type of expectation is very much reasonable and should be the norm for this fan base going into 2023.
Hey, my hope, Jamal, is that all the Victory Bell game does is decide who's the home team in the Pac-12 title game. Who wears the white jersey, who wears the red, or who wears the colored jersey, because I hope it's going to be UCLA and USC rematch in the Pac-12 title. Lock that up. But should be a fun season. That's all the time we got. Thank you all for hanging out with us on radio. This is the LA Football Show. For Jamal Madney, I'm Ryan Darrett. Everyone have a blessed weekend. Enjoy the U.S. Open. Enjoy Father's Day this weekend, and we'll talk to everyone next week.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.